Welcome to the Diverse Minds podcast, where we give you the tips, tools and techniques you need to be a mentally healthy and inclusive leader. Each week, you'll hear about a variety of topics linked to mental health, well-being and diversity that will enhance both your professional practice and personal well-being.
Welcome to the 194th episode of the award-winning Diverse Minds podcast. And this month's theme is all about climate chaos, crisis and anxiety. And the theme for Mental Health Awareness Week 2023 is anxiety. And I thought it was really important to bring the two together. Now, to join me today in talking about this is Jelly Mae Moring. Jelly is passionate about supporting organisations in going beyond sustainability and creating a more positive impact for people and the planet. And she's worked in this area for numerous years. She's currently an organiser and campaigner at Parents for Future UK network, a love-led global climate movement of parents working together to advocate for a just transition and a livable planet for all children. She's helped coordinate the Warm This Winter campaign, in which Parents for Future UK is an active partner. Jelly also works with a local school and the city council in her local area to set up a walking bus to reduce traffic congestion and air pollution around the school, increase the road traffic safety for children, and engage the parents and pupils in active travel. And she does a whole host more. So really looking forward to diving into this. And Jelly, a huge welcome to the show.
Hi, Leila. Thank you so much for having me here. It's such a privilege to be speaking with you at your podcast.
Oh, we're so delighted and we're so excited. And I've read out your bio, but I'm just wondering if you could tell listeners what you're working on at the moment.
Of course. Hi, everyone. My name is Jelly. I am a mother of 2 young children. I'm a sustainability professional and I help organizations to create a positive impact for people and planet. And I'm really passionate about helping to drive transformational change through climate advocacy. Because as you know, we are facing the most pressing issue of our time, the climate crisis, and we are at a critical time to act urgently on it. And I'm saying this because I come from the Philippines and I'm originally from there. And it's one of the countries that is mostly affected by extreme weather events due to climate change. And I'm so proud of my heritage, and we are very strong, resilient people. But at times I can't help but feel terrified to be a Filipino, just thinking about what it means for us to live in a warming planet. And I'm really concerned for my family and my relatives back in the Philippines and what this means for the future of my country. And also I'm really concerned about the kind of world that my children and their children will be living in and the impacts that they face as our planet is heating up. That's kind of, I'm already talking about my worries here, but also what's even more worrying is the lack of urgency and action on the climate crisis. I've worked in climate-related issues for over a decade now, and the pace of global action has been frustratingly slow. And I can't help but think, why can't we get that same rapid response that we had seen from country leaders during the COVID-19 pandemic? Why can't we have that as well? You know, this is an urgent issue. And so one of the things that I realized as well when I became a mom is that I need a support network to help me get through parenting challenges and also these climate concerns that I have. And it's not healthy and sustainable to be facing these concerns alone. And what I learned from growing up in the Philippines is the importance of community, of having a strong support network for individuals and families to thrive. And so I came across Parents for Future, and it's a climate movement of parents working together to advocate for a livable planet for all children. I currently work as an organizer at Parents for Future. I am part of the organizing committee. I work with 7 others who are all amazing mothers, and we support the growth of the movement. We provide a safe and welcoming community. We support parent members to actively engage and be part of the solution. And so at Parents for Future, we do this by building a community of concerned parents who want to take action on climate change, whether in their households or in their communities. We have spaces where parent members can connect with each other to form local groups in their areas, but also support each other emotionally as we navigate how to parent in a climate crisis. And we also empower parents to get involved or take action through campaigning. So we are active partners of national campaigns such as Stop Rosebank and Warm This Winter. Stop Rosebank is a campaign dedicated to preventing Rosebank, which is a hugely damaging undeveloped oil field in the North Sea that's owned by Norway's Equinor, which is a fossil fuel company. And it could be approved by the UK government to go ahead at any moment soon. So Stop Rosebank is working to oppose this, but also oppose all new oil and gas extraction projects or licenses, which we really can't allow to happen if we want to have a livable planet. And the other campaign that I'm talking about was the Warm This Winter campaign. It's a coalition of over 40 of the UK's leading charities, and we are an active partner of the campaign. And it demands the government to act to help people struggling with fuel poverty due to rising energy costs and the leaky homes that we have here in the UK, and also to ensure that we all have access to clean, affordable energy in the future. And so through these campaigns, parents have ways to take actions to help push for change, whether it's raising awareness on the issues with their family, friends, and colleagues, or it could be writing to their MPs, or working with their local leaders to support the campaign demands.
Thank you, Jelly. And there's a lot there, and you're absolutely right. And I'm so glad you talked about your heritage and identity, because we think about, Philippines, Bangladesh, the temperatures that people saw in Pakistan, in Karachi, in Iraq. Yeah, it's very, very, very serious, as we know. I'm not saying anxiety disorders and anxiety in and of itself isn't an important topic, but I think to link it to climate justice and climate chaos and climate disaster is so important. And you talked about having worked in the climate movement for over 10 years, climate justice movement. How did you know that was your calling? How did you know that's the area you wanted to work in?
So let me maybe go back to when I first heard about climate change. So I first heard about climate change when I did my master's degree on environmental governance in Germany. And that was back in 2006. And so there I learned that the Philippines would be one of the most vulnerable to climate change impacts. So this would mean we'd have stronger typhoons, droughts, and we'd lose a lot of our land due to sea level rise. And I remember thinking, how can we be so unlucky and have to face more disasters when we already are, And I felt so concerned for my country's future that I actually did most of my research during my master's on climate change adaptation. Because if severe impacts are what we Filipinos are up against, then we need to know how to live with them. But what I also didn't realize at the time was that there are underlying inequalities and power imbalances that contribute to climate change, which is what climate justice is aiming to address. So the concept of climate justice actually has geographical and societal dimensions to it. It recognizes that climate change affects different communities and individuals in different ways, and that the most vulnerable and marginalized populations are often the most impacted. But also the responsibility for human-caused climate change is distributed unevenly. So most of the historical carbon emissions have been from the richest countries that have the most resources and capacity to adapt to rising temperatures. So maybe you realize that climate change is really closely related to and is already exacerbating existing inequalities in our society, such as structural racism. So people with less privilege because of their economic background or gender or ethnicity, etc., they are likely to be worse affected by the impacts of climate change as well. And then there is also the intergenerational aspect of climate justice. That is, the burden of climate change and its consequences will be borne disproportionately by young people and future generations who have contributed the least to rising temperatures, but will have to suffer most from the impacts. Rising sea levels, extreme weather events, food and water insecurity, displacement, and migration. So this is why a key aspect of climate justice is about advocating for policies and actions that not only reduce greenhouse gas emissions, but also prioritize the needs and rights of those who are most affected by climate change. So these include providing climate finance to support low carbon transition, climate adaptation and resilience, and ensuring that the voices and perspectives of those who have historically contributed the least to climate change are included in climate policy and decision-making processes. Layla, I forgot to add about love.
Yes, go for it.
When you become a parent, that's when you know about unconditional love. And love is very powerful. It can move mountains. It can push us to act selflessly. And as a parent of 2 young children, my love for them empowers me to fight for a future where they can thrive and live safely. And that includes, stopping new fossil fuel projects. And that's what we're also doing at Parents for Future. So yes, love is powerful.
Yeah, thank you so much. And yeah, really beautifully put. And I love the way you summarise the very honest truth about the power imbalances, the systemic imbalances, the legacy of colonialism. And in another future episode, I speak to Irina Sua from Kenya, and she talks about the settlers, and she talks about wars and the impact that that's had on Africa as a continent and climate change. And so building on that then, when we talk about climate change, climate chaos, climate crisis, and climate justice, for people who want to understand more, what are the nuances between those terms?
Okay, so climate change basically refers to the long-term alteration of global weather patterns and ecosystems, and it's caused by human activities such as the burning of fossil fuels, deforestation, and industrial processes that release large amounts of greenhouse gases into the atmosphere. So these greenhouse gases trap heat, and this heat then would lead to rising temperatures, and those have consequences. So that means, the ice in the glaciers would melt. So then that would contribute to sea level rise, would contribute to extreme weather events. And there are other environmental changes that then have significant impacts on our health, on ecosystems, and in our economy. So, and it is a global issue and it really requires urgent action so that we can reduce greenhouse gas emissions and transition to a more sustainable and low carbon economy. And it is quite complex because it affects all aspects of human life, from food security, public health, economic stability, and also political stability. So it really requires all of us to work together so that we can live in a planet that is sustainable and safe. And climate justice, I just kind of mentioned a while ago, it's basically a concept that kind of recognizes that climate change has underlying inequalities and that it will exacerbate existing inequalities in the society. So ensuring that this is also addressed whenever we discuss about climate change in, globally or even locally.
Yeah, and I think that's very important because often I think people can feel marginalized from the campaign. So there's been lots of discussions, haven't there, around climate campaigners being from certain backgrounds in the UK. So having advantages, having access. If you go to prison, we know that it's going to be far more dangerous as a global majority person in the global north in the UK to go to prison. And certain people have more leeway or won't get a criminal record. So I'm very grateful though those people who do protest in the way that they do, because I feel passionately about the climate, but I don't necessarily feel I could chain myself to a bridge because of the risk it poses to me as a brown person. So I think that's also a really important thing to recognize, and that we can all campaign in our own way, right? Because I think not taking flights, not getting in your car, those are all ways of, and people say, oh, well, it's only one small action. But I think if we all had that mindset, it would make a huge change. Writing to our MPs about public transport. What are your thoughts on that?
Exactly. I totally agree with you. And small actions add up. And so anything that we can do to help reduce our emissions, that is great. And actually, I have been doing that as an individual for a long time. And what I realized is that what is actually more powerful is collective action. And so I got involved in the Parents for Future movement right after the Global Summit on Climate Change in Glasgow. I actually attended a panel session at a Climate Justice Fringe event. And this was about mothers from different regions of the world sharing their stories of climate activism. And they were all part of the Parents for Future global network. But they have also founded like Parents for Future in their respective countries. And I really came out inspired after that session. And what really made me want to join was listening to them sharing their concerns of what their children's future would be like in the face of climate change, which was how I had been feeling since I became a parent. But also what empowered me was hearing their initiatives and what they were doing in their community. So how they managed that emotion was actually through action. And so they got involved in their communities and their children's schools, just to do their part in addressing the crisis and provide a safe future for their children. And so my first thought was, I think I found my tribe. And this is it. Like, actually, this is how I can kind of channel those concerns that I have. It's through action. And I can do this with these parents, with these moms. So then I became actively involved as a volunteer. And in the summer of last year, I became a member of the organizing committee supporting the movement in the growth and development. So now I'm trying to kind of encourage other parents as well to join us, because it's really powerful.
Yeah, brilliant. And that's really great, Jelly. Thank you. And then I wanted to touch on mental ill health and culture. So you've talked very clearly about, we know global majority of people actually in the global north and the global south, but the global south are most affected by climate change when they put very little into the tipping point and resources. So what can and should we be doing to support people and also supporting global majority communities around the world with mental well-being as it relates to climate justice and chaos and change?
That's a really good question, Leila. Yeah, it's really important to recognize that mental health is a critical issue in many parts of the world, but particularly in the global south, where people are already experiencing the impacts and they're already living through it. But then it's also important to acknowledge that this climate anxiety is not experienced equally among people in the global south and the global north, and neither does it impact the mental health of white people the same way as it does on Black, Indigenous, and people of color, who are disproportionately affected by the physical damage of the climate crisis. So the consequences of this on their mental health would also be significant. So, these people are living through these impacts right now. So the anxiety that they feel is more like trauma and the fear that they might die, for example, due to the excess heat that they're already having, or the floods that they will be experiencing when there is really heavy rains. But I think there are several things that we can do to address it, and that is to raise awareness. So we should talk about it. It's important that we talk about how we feel about the climate crisis and the impact of this on our mental health. And I think it's still quite, and not ignored, but maybe neglected a bit. I think people kind of just dismiss it. Oh, it's nothing. It's far away. It's not a threat. But actually, it is. And so we need to talk about it. And it's really important that we do that, because all emotions are valid. But also, we need to build community and solidarity, because this is how we can develop individual resilience as well. Individuals cope well with the effects of climate change when they are part of that community. And so, that would also support the adaptation and resilience. And I think it goes beyond provision of mental health care services as well during climate disasters. So I think it goes into maybe, like, when we look at climate action, we need to also look at strengthening livelihood security, our housing, education, and general healthcare services, so that we all build individual and community resilience.
That's essential, isn't it? The cultural and community capabilities, capacity building, and how you have to have advocates and allies in order to do that, often because of the legacy of colonialism. Yeah, thank you. And there's a lot of greenwashing out there, as we know. Buy this product and we donate 10% to Greenpeace. This is really good for the environment, la, 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 la. But, what can workplaces really be doing to talk about climate change and mental health in a realistic and not tokenistic way? So it's all very well doing one thing, but we know that it goes back to systems, procurement, campaigning, etc. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, and that's really important, because we spend the majority of our adult life in workplaces. And as we are heading towards a warming planet, it's then essential that organizations take this into account. So it's really important that they create a supportive and inclusive environment that acknowledges the impacts of climate change on employee well-being. So some of the things that I think workplaces can do is to provide education and training on climate change, and also the impacts of it on physical but also mental health. So that includes resources that explain connection between climate change, mental health, and also strategies on how they can cope with those. And another thing that is really important is to foster a supportive workplace culture where employees feel comfortable discussing their concerns about climate change. So having that open, inclusive space for them to get together to talk and act on it I think is really powerful, because then that would encourage them to take action on it, that they can then start implementing sustainable practices in the office, but also promote individual sustainable behavior. So get everyone in your organization involved in wider discussions and implementation of your sustainability plan or strategy. So that involves looking at where your emissions are coming from, how you can reduce those, understanding what you invest in and spend money on. Are you supporting businesses that derive the extraction of fossil fuels, for example? That is contributing to climate change. And also have a look at your values and practices as an organization. Are your core values truly ingrained and closely aligned in your way of doing your work or business? But also equally important is how your organization is adapting and building resilience. So for example, how are you supporting your employees to deal with hotter temperatures or extreme weather events and the impacts of these in your business and their places of work, whether that's an office or in their homes?
So crucial, and I think it's often forgotten about. And I remember having a discussion with a particularly senior person in a university saying, a parent has come to me from Bangladesh talking about the climate change. And I said, well, I can't do anything about it, and sent her away. And these attitudes are so unhelpful. And like you were saying, we need to be talking about this. We need to be appreciating it. We need to be lobbying government on it as well. I'm also thinking about pensions, Jelly. So pension investments in Tarsan. So that's another area where employers can say, wait a second, we want that looked at. And I think there is actually quite a lot of power in that, because there have been certain campaigns that have been successful, around tar sands in Canada, etc. So always wanted to mention pensions, as it's a really hot topic as well. And now the lifetime allowance has been eliminated. Who knows if it's going to come back, but all those things really add up.
Exactly. Yeah. And there's actually a local campaign here in Leicester to divest the pension fund in the county council. And I'm in touch with a group, and I'm actually involved in the group that is working in that, and is really, really important. So if you are an employee in our organization and you want to ask your organization where your pensions go, that's already a good first step.
Yeah, brilliant. So Jelly, obviously this is not easy work psychologically, mentally. There'll be times where you feel it's one step forward, two steps back. So how do you look after your own mental health, and what are the top 3 tips that you'd like to share with listeners?
Yeah, I'm there with you, Leila, when you say it's emotionally challenging work, having to deal with climate change and related issues. And also as a parent, like it's a double kind of challenge in a way. But I'm really fortunate to have found Parents for Future and be a part of its caring community of parent members and have people to talk to who understand the challenges of parenting, and raising kids in a warming planet, which I think we all need to be learning, I think, as a collective, as a society, because it's new. It's something which our parents and grandparents didn't have to go through. Maybe they were experiencing some change, but it was very minor and they didn't have any awareness at all. But now that we are aware, we have that responsibility to act on it. And this is something that we are navigating, in our parenting. Okay, so the top 3 tips that I do is, what I find really helpful is incorporating regular movement throughout my day. So maybe that's yoga, or it's just stretching, or a quick walk around the neighborhood or park at lunchtime. I think that really refreshed me, and then I'm okay for the rest of the day. And also another thing is cooking. Cooking is like meditation for me. I really love to cook and experiment in the kitchen. I look for different ways of combining ingredients that I have in the fridge. I mainly cook vegetarian dishes at home, and I just really enjoy it, and it's just amazing like how different ingredients work together, and I find that fascinating. I think the other one is spending quality time with family and friends. Connection is just so important. I think I'm a remote worker now, and I still find it really hard to kind of just be on my own. But I make sure to spend time with family and friends, like really physically connect with them, schedule regular meetups. And I think the 4th one would be rest. As they say, rest is radical in this work. So I make sure to take breaks and pace myself with the things that I need doing, because there are so many things to do.
Yeah, I love that. Rest is totally radical, actually, and we think we have to keep doing. But you probably heard this: we're human beings, not human doings, which I have to remind myself about too. So, Jelly, thank you so much for your openness, your honesty, the amazing sort of depth of your knowledge. If people want to know more about your work, how would you like them to connect and contact with you? And I will, of course, include the links in the show notes.
Of course, you can find more information about Parents for Future on our website. It's parentsforfuture.org.uk. And also we are on social media, so on Instagram, where we currently have almost 20,000 followers, and that's our most active social media. But we're also on Facebook and Twitter. And we have regular meet and greet calls where parents and caregivers can learn more about what we do and how they can get involved in the work. members have also access to our private Slack and WhatsApp channels, and that's where we have our general chats, and we provide emotional support to each other, because it is tough work being a parent, but also a lot of these climate concerns that we are having. It's even more important that we care about each other and build a strong community as we navigate towards this warming planet.
Yeah, and thank you so much, Jelly. And I hope this has galvanized people into some action, or at least reflecting, or if you're part of the climate justice movements, how you can get support and care for yourself. Well, thank you, Jelly. Thank you so much for your time again. And please, everyone, join us next week where we'll be talking more about anxiety and climate change, climate justice, climate chaos, and what you can do. And until then, take care.
Thanks for listening to the Diverse Minds podcast. Don't forget to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you access your podcasts from. You can also connect with me on Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn. Tune into next week's episode of the podcast, where I'll bring you more insights on mental health and inclusion. Bye for now.